Yeah, so good evening, everybody. So thank you very much for joining to our weekly discussions on plurilingualism, multilingualism. And I'm honored to introduce and to welcome among us Teresa Ting, who I met in Lancaster once, and I just enjoyed working with her very much and talking to her very much. So that was still face-to-face time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could go to cafes and pubs, yeah, and had long discussions. Yeah. So thank you very much, Teresa, for joining us. So Teresa comes from Italy now. I mean, that's your place of work and place where you live, and you're a professor of English applied linguistics. Am I right? Yeah. So Teresa works at University of Calabria in Italy. It's interesting that when I looked, at your education path, you did Bachelor of Science, so in psychology, with minor in sociology, and then you proceeded to Bachelor of Science in biology with minor in chemistry. And in 1989, Teresa got a PhD award, so she was awarded with PhD in biology with specialization in neurobiology. But this is not the end. In 2003, she graduated from the University of East Anglia, so in UK, and she received the title of Master of Arts in Professional Development of ELT practitioners. So she's just the right person really to talk about neuroscience or neurolinguistics. This is something that, is not so widespread, or the teachers, I think, that have joined our weekly discussions were not trained on this topic. So we are really very happy to listen to you and to all the outcomes and results of your studies. Thanks again. And the Zoom is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Carmen, it was such a pleasure to meet you, yes, back when. And it's a pleasure to be here now. We have fond memories of Ljubljana. We had a very good friend of ours who was at the University of Ljubljana. He's probably retired now. And anyways, I'm going to try and organize my screen now so I can be, let's see, I want to share my screen. I'm going to share my whole screen so I can see people, if that's okay with everybody. It's kind of ugly, but it's, I think, a nicer way to do things. Let's see, yeah, okay, if you don't mind, I'll do it this way, okay? And if you cannot see something, please yell out, okay?
Teresa, now we can see two documents, the PPT and the Word. Okay, good.
Okay, I'm gonna be moving between the two. Okay, so I'm gonna start with this. Voila. Okay, and I'll cover up. Okay, so so a little bit of patience for you. So is this big enough? Can you see enough? Great.
Well, it is big enough for me. Yeah, you can see.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, now, this is what I got from the message from Carmen and Tina when they wrote to me, languages matter, and this is what I found, the key words that perked my interest, plurilingualism friendly in the educational environment, and plurilingual multilingual education, challenges and benefits. So the title of the presentation, as you know, is Language of Learning and Education as Seen Through Neuroscience. And I'm from the University of Calabria, this little red dot right here. And so I'm at the chemistry department. I'm an applied linguist for English, but I'm in the chemistry department, okay? Now, before I start, a little word of caution, because Carmen told you that I am going to link neuroscience and education. So the question you must always ask yourself for anybody who's going to try and talk to you about both education and the brain is, you should ask yourself, what does she know about the brain? And what does she know about learning in the classroom? Because, there's a lot of strange stuff going on out there. Now, as Carmen said, my PhD is in neurobiology, and I study memory and neurotoxicity and neuroendocrinology, but using rats and hamsters in vivo and in vitro, because you can take their slices of their brain and do certain studies, or you can implant electrodes in their brain, like I did here, and you can study motivation. And we're going to talk about that also in this seminar and the other one, okay? And here you can use slices of their brain to study anatomical changes as a result of continuous stimulus, okay? Now, at that time, to tell you how old I am, at that time there were no MRIs. Nowadays with MRIs, if you have a suspicion of anything, you just put the person in the MRI, like I did my son many times. A headache, MRI. At that time, there were no MRIs. So what we had to teach, as a PhD student, I also taught at the medical school. So I taught future medical doctors. And we had to teach them using clinical symptoms to show, from the clinical symptoms of how somebody speaks, how somebody walks, how somebody talks, etc., we had to identify where the tumor or the lesion might be in the brain. And then hopefully when the surgeon goes in, the lesion is there, okay? Nowadays, yeah, like I said, you don't have to worry so much about the clinical diagnosis anymore. But anyways, that is what I was trained to teach, okay? Then I moved to Italy, voila. And, you know, Italy, a land of fashion, creativity, Ferraris. And Italians are also very creative with their human resources. So they said to me, you know about rats, that's fantastic. So why don't you teach English? And like Carmen said, to do that, I of course had to do a little more than just speak English. So I got my MA from East Anglia, okay? So that I could learn to teach the language that I could speak, because I was raised speaking English. Now, for me, these two are very related. This student in the classroom and this rat in the cage, because we are much more similar to rats than we would like to admit. And we will find out. But for sure, when we learn with our brain, and education acts on the brain. So I personally believe that teaching must have some attention to how the brain learns, processes, or does not process information. And hopefully that's what we'll be looking at today and also the next seminar. Now, so when I see students like this in my classroom, I actually think of my little rats, motivation rats, and their slices of their brain, and I see that. And that's what you, I hope, will see after today's seminar too. Okay, now I am going to, so my background leads to my thinking, okay? In biomedical research, we value biomedical research for its ability to develop therapeutic treatments for the end user, which are patients. I'd like you to complete this in the chat, but don't send it until I say send. Type in the chat the missing words, and then when I say send, everybody sends. So let's repeat this. Biomedical research is valued for its ability to develop therapeutic treatments for the end user, patients. Education research is valued for its ability to develop what? For the end user, who? Okay, I'd like you to type that in the chat, okay? And when I say send, we send. Let me now activate the chat. Let me see. Okay, don't type yet. I mean, type, but don't send yet. Okay? So. Okay, start sending. Let's see what people say. Quality education for the students, knowledge, skills for the students. Very good. Learning strategies, motivation for the students. Okay. Learning and teaching For the students, okay, excellent. For teachers and students, people, competence for people, very good. Okay, very good. Okay, so my personal completion of this would be to develop instructional materials for the end user, which are students. That's just my personal opinion, because instructional materials is, I think, more like a therapeutic treatment, and the end user for me is the learner, and just like the patient. Okay, now let me see here. So those are my interests and my expertise. Now let me go back to this. Now my interest and expertise here, I basically am very interested in transforming research. My interest is in transforming research findings from cognitive neuroscience into instructional materials. Okay, that's what I'm really interested in doing. So we apply what we know about how the brain processes information, or not, into what is useful for the students. Okay? And more importantly, third point, without requiring teachers to step out of their comfort zones. Okay? Because we know, I mean, I have taught high school chemistry and biology, etc., in experimental projects. So we have to be able to work within our comfort zone. So that is my interest in how to apply neuroscience information. Okay, now, if you remember, I had contacted everybody with this survey. Okay, and some of you answered, and here are your answers. I'd like you to look at these for a little bit. So the question was, when you think of the brain and the language of learning and education, what comes to mind? Okay, what comes to mind? What's one thing you already understand and would like to share with me, and what is one issue you would like me to address in the workshop if I can? So these are the answers I got. Just take a quick look at them. So these are some of the, these are what some respondents answered, okay? And so this is what we're going to try and tackle today. Okay, now let's see. Let's now go to here. So, voila. Okay, you can see this. Now, so the seminar today and the second seminar we had programmed for January 18th, we're going to be looking at neuroscience of learning and not through instructional materials, okay? Now, I have materials for preschool, primary, preschool meaning, of course, kindergarten. Primary, for me, meant up to the age of to about 11, okay, or 12, okay? Lower secondary starts from 12, 13 to about 14. And then upper secondary is high school, okay, is what we consider high school. So that's, and tertiary is university. Now, these with stars are materials which are published, so I can share with you. And this material, upper secondary, is material that has received an international award, so I'll be sharing that with you too. Okay, now, in your project, We're working to develop guidelines based on data from target analyses and identified variables to help create a plurilingual friendly educational environment. Okay? And I'm going to start with a suggestion for your guideline immediately. You should harness age-appropriate content to prompt for age-appropriate thinking and develop age-appropriate language and cultivate competences. Okay, so I'm very glad somebody mentioned competences in the first task. Now, so I would like to invite you, a suggestion for your guideline would be to consider Clil. Okay, content and language integrated learning, which is different from content-based language instruction. It's not the same thing, and we can talk about that during the discussion. And also consider EMI, English medium instruction, especially if you're teaching at the universities. As you know, universities are going EMI, and it's very content driven. There's also bilingual schools, of course. Okay, so now, does anybody have any experiences with Clil or EMI? Anybody like to? I'd like to spend a minute just to wonder about who has done something. Turn on your microphones and tell us about it. Anybody? Is it popular in Slovenia, Carmen?
Well, we have a problem here because actually we are not allowed to have bilingual schools. Let's say you cannot come up with an idea, you know, to set up a bilingual school, which would be, let's say, Slovene English one or Slovene, I don't know, German. We have actually bilingual schools in one area, which is a minority area, so Hungarian Slovene schools. But otherwise, well, there is this article in the law which says that the only language, you know, that is kind of allowed in the classrooms is Slovenian. Oh. But you know, we still do Clil, but we do Clil in English lessons. Yeah. And I'm sure that we have quite a lot of what we call cross-curricular lessons, where, let's say, I don't know, science teachers cooperate with language teachers, and then they together perform a lesson, you know, or teach students, you know, let's say, I don't know, chemistry through English, okay, in this way. But this is never, you know, like a special subject, or chemistry cannot be taught entirely through English. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
This is our situation. It's the situation of you know, small nations with the, you know, the language that should be preserved and so on. But I mean, my colleagues have might have a different opinion, but that's from my experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can have the co-teaching of chemistry, for example, but you cannot have EMI. You cannot have
exactly. Yeah. I mean, unless, okay, we have British schools and American schools, but these are not, I mean, state schools. Okay, so in state school education, this is not really.
What about universities?
Universities? Well, now for Erasmus students, let's say we have, I mean, at the faculty that I teach, we offer, I don't know, about 10 or even more subjects that are content-based and taught in English, but they are offered to Erasmus students, and our students can also join in. But otherwise, no, English is still a special subject, and yeah.
Okay. Anybody else would like to add anything? If not, I'd like to move on then. That's very interesting, and I will therefore now argue for the point being that this even more important is my argument today would be that content offers foreign language instruction a lot of potential, and that's what I hope you'll be able to take away with that today. Okay, so let's look at this. When we say we harness content, age-appropriate content, for age-appropriate thinking, to develop age-appropriate language, that's one point, and cultivate competencies, that's point number 2. So I'm going to look at this. Age-appropriate languages. Okay, let's look at age-appropriate language, what we mean by that. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay, is that better? Yes. Okay, we look at age-appropriate languages in school language, L1, which would be for you, Slovene, and whatever target foreign language, okay? So I mean languages, the plural of languages, meaning also the home language, okay? The school language, in your case. So here is a student called Johannes. He's 18 years old, a student who loves carpentry and aspires to be a furniture designer for IKEA, for example, okay? And here he is, okay? Janos, okay? You might be familiar with him. And he's a student, he's 18. He looks a little older, but he is learning English as a foreign language in school. Now, after 12 years, because I don't know, your students probably learn English maybe for 12 years like they do in Italy?
Nowadays, I mean, let's say 95% start in year 1, so which is age 6, but 100, so everybody has to start in year 2 when they're 7.
Yeah, English.
There are about, I don't know, 8-10% of German schools. So,
okay.
Yeah, so these are students who learn German as their first foreign language. Yeah.
Okay, so substitute English for German, whatever foreign language. So after 12 years of learning this foreign language, like in Italy, 12 years of learning English, what type of English would Janis need to find a job? What kind of English? Is it enough to say, hello, my name is Janis, my favorite sport is soccer. Punto. Finito. Okay? Actually, the question is, what type of Slovene should Janis be speaking after being in school for 12 years? What kind of L1 are we expecting him to produce after 12 years of schooling? Okay? Now, we'll proceed, but I'm sure that you, as teachers, would understand that we're talking about not just interpersonal communication, my favorite sport is soccer, but also academic language. Okay? I mean, if I'm going to teach somebody 12 years of English, I hope at the end they can at least be somewhat academic. Okay? And that's a problem, because they're not. Okay? And so, let's look at Cummins' continuum of linguistic registers. Okay? Are you familiar with those? Is everybody here familiar with that? Cummins? I think so, yeah? Okay? So we have, of course, the BICS and the CALP. Okay? So, basic, just in case, basic interpersonal communication skills, and as opposed to cognitive academic language proficiency. Basically, this means that because Cummins, as a reminder, he studied immigrants. And after 2 years, immigrants were able to use interpersonal social language to ask for whatever they need to ask for. But it took 7 years to get academic language in the immigrant population. And of course, the better they were at managing academic language, the better they did in schools, these immigrants. But the same with our students in their mother tongue, okay? What is academic language? Let's call it the one that gives you good grades, okay? Teachers teach. They don't necessarily use academic language to teach, but they expect you to produce the academic language, okay? And and what is this academic language? If it's of a disciplinary subject, it's called disciplinary discourse, okay? And disciplinary discourse, I would define it as discipline-condoned ways of communicating about disciplinary knowledge, okay? And who condones this? Who decides what is the right way to language about a certain disciplinary subject? Who decides? Who are the people that decide what's the right way? Does anybody want to say something before I show you the answers? Would anybody like to say who decides what is the right way for people of a discipline like physicists and biologists and linguists? What's the right way for them to talk about their discipline? Who decides? Anybody? Yes? No? Okay, well, hopefully. The community of practice. Okay, the community of practice, Leven Wenger. Okay, so of course, the disciplinary subjects, it's community of practice. So physicists speak to physicists, and they speak using the language of physics. And chemists do the same, linguists do the same, cartoonists do the same, taxi drivers do the same, mechanics do the same, etc. Okay, economists, etc. Okay, so the language of X, that's the disciplinary discourse. And at the end of 12 years of school, students should be able to manage these disciplinary discourses. If Janos wants to sell furniture to IKEA, what is he going to do? Is he just going to say, "Dear IKEA, attached an image of my furniture"? No, he needs to say, what is the material? What is the design? What is special? He needs to manage the language of his discipline to be able to show IKEA that he has a special table. So even in carpentry, there is the language of the discipline, okay? For him to send a photo to IKEA and have IKEA consider his idea. So in all disciplines, there is the discourse. And that is where we fail. We fail to help students acquire and manage that disciplinary discourse. The production part, not the reception, but the production. Productive academic literacy, productive disciplinary discourse, okay? And that is not just, that's all over the world, we're failing. Okay, and we'll see why at the end of these seminars. Now, that was part one, excuse me, of age-appropriate language. Okay, now let's look at this. Harness age-appropriate content, again, content, to prompt for age-appropriate thinking. So we're not just talking about what's your favorite food, what's your favorite color when we're in high school. Okay, when 15-year-olds, we don't care about their favorite color, favorite food. We want to talk about chemistry, biology, sociology, history. Content, age-appropriate content for age-appropriate thinking, to cultivate competences. Okay, so what competences come to mind? I'm not going to let you sit there now. I want you to type in the chat, type at least one competence that comes to mind when you think about cultivating competences in our students. So please type in the chat immediately and send it. Let's see what people write. Lifelong learning, okay, so learning, okay? So knowing, learning how to learn. Okay, understanding, evaluating maybe one's own understanding, being able to gauge understanding. Okay, those are the competence, okay? The lifelong learning is the act, okay? What's the competence behind that? The competence is learning how to learn, okay? Understanding is the act, is the verb, is the action. Understanding is what the behavior, but the competence is understanding what we don't understand so we can understand, okay? Global understanding, okay, having social awareness. Mathematical competence, okay, Carmen, mathematical competence, being able to manage numbers. You see numbers in the newspaper and you don't panic, okay? Effective communication, thank you, Lipek, okay? Moika, okay? Moitza, that's the name, right? Okay, Moitza. Okay, that's effective communication. Oh, great. That is effective. That is a competence. Yes, being able to communicate effectively for the right occasion, using the right register. Okay, so when Janos wants to write to IKEA, he cannot just say, "Oi, here's an image." Okay, he has to write using the right register. Okay, let me show you some of mine. Let me move this down. Some competences that I listed. See if they ring. May make sense to you. I'll have you take a look at it yourselves. Okay. Now, so here, Natasha wrote various literacies. Yes, various literacies. Logical deduction, pattern recognition, visual literacy graph. These are all the different collaborative problem solving. Nowadays, children will have to be working in international groups. So they need to listen, negotiate, and debate. Okay, so effective communication, like what was mentioned previously. Okay, so these are the competences. Now let's look at some materials, okay? And then get into the brain, okay? So let's start with respondent A. How to make students learn a second language, and it's not English. Okay, well, unfortunately, this is English because I teach English, but can be for any other language, which was respondent E, okay? They were interested in German, I think, okay? So let's consider preschool children, and these are, I'm sorry, when primary, I interpret it as preschool, so forget that, okay? Now, what are some challenges for teaching preschool children, children who don't read or write? And I'm going to just show it to you. They don't read or write, and they have short attention span. Now, I'm going to show you, therefore, here was a project. Now, this, of course, is way younger than what you usually teach, but I hope they can stimulate your thinking. This is a project that I did with my son and his diaper buddies. Were 4 years old. They're still friends, so they're all diaper buddies still. They teach, so I was teaching preschool children ages 3 to 5 in a 2-month project for 8 lessons. This is what we wanted to teach. All these food items, all these parts of the body, all these clothes. We want articulation, shirt, skirt, hat, head, leg, egg, okay? Articulation, regular plurals, because you're too young for irregulars yet. And the pronunciation, z, socks, z, shoes, okay? As, oranges, okay? We wanted them to learn all this in 8 lessons, okay? And this is what we did, okay? And I'll show you what we did, because the Clil Mindset sees foreign language learning as an opportunity to do more than simply more foreign language, okay? So let's teach some English, but more importantly, can we also use the moment to do some age-appropriate content learning or skill building? That is the Clil Mindset, okay? That is the Clil Mindset. And here is the task. I'm going to show you the task. Now, let's see. Is it being called up? Let's see now. Okay, here we go. It's alive. Okay, here's the task. Remember, these are preschool, so they're not reading. Now, and here's a task. Here's what the students got. And this is what the students received as instruction. Okay? Now, there are 20-some children, okay, who don't read. And the instruction is, look at this line of fruits. Some are missing. So, let's read them. Strawberry, strawberry, pineapple, apple. Again, strawberry, strawberry, pineapple, apple. Okay, so with the children we repeat this, strawberry, strawberry, and the children repeat together. And then, what do they have to do? They have to come and ask me for the fruits that you need to complete this sequence. So what happens? The students come one at a time to ask for the next fruit here. Okay? I hope you know. What's the okay, give me the next one, give me the next give me the next 4 missing fruits, please. Type in the chat. Don't send it until I say send. Okay, don't copy from each other. So strawberry, strawberry, pineapple, apple. Okay, so the next 4 missing fruits, please. Type it, and then when I say send, you send it. Just the next 4 missing fruit. Just the next 4 missing ones. Okay, please send. Bravissimi. Okay. Okay. Strawberry is missing. Pineapple, apple. And then strawberry, strawberry. Okay. Now, what happens in the dynamics of this class? Okay. In the dynamics of this lesson, what happens is each student comes up. They have to remember what they need. They stand in line waiting for the other 19 students in front of them to finish, and then they come to me and say, strawberry, please. Okay, then take the strawberry, they go back to the seat and take the strawberry, put the strawberry down. Then they do the pineapple, then they figure out the next one is a strawberry. Is an apple. So they think about apple, standing in line for apple for 20 students, and while they're standing in line, everybody is saying, apple please, strawberry please, strawberry. So it's a real chaos in there, okay? But everybody is hearing apple please, pineapple please, strawberry please. They are saying apple please, strawberry please. You know how children are. They're yelling and yelling. And at the end, they have learned this. After they finish this page, they have learned what a strawberry is, they've learned what an apple is, and what a pineapple is, for sure, okay? In one lesson, okay? Just one worksheet. These are other worksheets. Scarf, sweater, jacket. Scarf, sweater, jacket. Ba-la-la-la. And then here we have plurals. Head, finger, eye, eyes. Head, finger, eye, eyes. And this, so what do we have here? If we return to what the participants were interested in, what we have is active learning. Okay? What we have is respondent E, we must repeat words X times. Yeah, that's a lot of time. Okay? Because they're all standing there repeating and repeating. And then also, what was it? Somebody else wrote here also that children can learn spontaneously, and they're connecting new information with old information. They already know what a strawberry is in Italian, okay? But now they've learned the new information, okay? And they're learning a second language. Oh, what I wanted to point out is here, okay? These first two. They are doing something with the language, okay? And they're doing different, they're speaking, they're listening, etc. And more importantly, problem solving. The problem solving process, this is for mathematics, sequence recognition, pattern recognition, logical deduction, obviously. Okay, so to figure out the sequence, you have to be thinking, okay? But it's solving a problem. We are pushing them into problem-solving mode, okay? And Carmen wrote, and learning to see the patterns, exactly. They're learning, this is pattern recognition. That's one of the early maths competences. Anybody want to say anything about this before we move on? Okay.
Did you also use like plastic, like toy, toy pineapples, toy toy strawberries, or pictures, or?
No, actually not.
Okay. So no need.
Actually, to tell you the truth, this is what it looked like. I'll show you a video of
okay, good.
my tray of these, this was a tray of my, so here's the worksheet, okay? And here are all the envelopes of little strawberries. There's a bag of apples, bag of pineapples, a bag of strawberries. And then here, because they recognize them, and here was an ice cube tray, which was used for this purpose. So the students could come up and I could give them one at a time. So the skill the teacher had to have was to be able to sit and meditate despite all the noise, okay? But no, they didn't need that because they recognized, okay? Because they were old enough to understand what the image represented, okay? But then at the end, Carmen, what we did was we read it, okay? And those who finished early, of course, colored, while those who finished later were still pasting. And then we read it. Okay, let's read it together. And they would read it. Strawberry, strawberry, pineapple, apple, strawberries. So, you know, so that was the whole process. Yes. Any other questions? So no, we didn't need to resort to anything different. Okay, so the cognitive competences developed through this task: pattern recognition, logical deduction, attention. We were cultivating their attention span because they had to stand in line and remember what they were supposed to be asking for, okay? So we were actually working on their working memory, and we'll talk a little bit about working memory, if not today, next time, okay? So we're cultivating their attention span. The social skills that were being cultivated, asking politely. They had to say please. When they said strawberry, they didn't get anything. They had to say strawberry, please, okay? And they had to wait in line, which is very good practice for Italians. And then here, the pedagogic strategy was active learning. They were definitely active learning, and they were also solvable problems. And this is very important. Solving a solvable problem. We're going to be talking about the neuroscience of that, okay? Solving a solvable problem, and they were in flux. Okay, they had to stand in line, think of what they had to do, and then they had to be in flux to be able to remember by the time they got to me what they were needing. Okay, and then here, they were reflecting, of course, of what they had to do. Okay, and they were, like the respondent said, rather than learning by heart, they were solving problems. So I didn't have to say anything about this is a strawberry, you know, they were doing the work. It was multimodal input because they were screaming, speaking, listening, yelling. It was, you know, they were producing their own modalities, okay, and multimodal output and a lot of repetition, okay. So now, let's see. So these are things we have managed to do, okay. These are what the respondents had said. Okay. So social interaction perspective. Let me close some of these windows. Okay. Because I can't. Okay. Now, so. Okay. Okay. Now, I'd like to look at this point. Person F said, I would like to know to what extent these perspectives and theories, meaning Vygotsky and Bloom's, etc., are supported by contemporary research in neuroscience. And that was a reasonable request. And my response to that is, actually, we don't need to use very contemporary neuroscience research to design good learning, okay? But I'd like to experience it ourselves, okay, as educators before we talk about theory, okay? So now I'd like to move into, I'll send you guys this article about the pineapples and stuff. I'd like to now move into upper secondary material, okay, for 14-year-olds, and to experience it yourself, what it means to take the theory and make it into a learning process, okay? So does everybody understand that we're now moving on, okay, to 14-year-olds? So this is preschool. With a Clil Mindset, we say, okay, we need to teach them all these words, etc., in English, but let's do something more than that. Okay? Now let's say same with upper secondary. Okay, now here, upper secondary, Clil. Now, I started in 2000, but I didn't know what Clil meant actually in 2000, but I did know two things. That that's, as a neuroscientist, what I did know was that there's already motivation pathway in the brain. There's already a motivation pathway in the brain, okay? And I'd like to show that to you. Let's see. Sorry, let me call this up. Okay. Meanwhile, are there any questions? Anybody? About the children? Okay, now let me see. I'm looking for the brain stimulus reward. Brain reward system. Okay, now here are the rats that I used to work with. Remember I told you that I had worked with little rats, and I used to put electrodes in their brain in this pathway called the brain stimulus reward pathway. Okay, and what's interesting is when I put the electrode in on Monday, for example, I would have to wait maybe until Thursday to see if the electrode was in the right place. Now, I knew if the electrode was in the right place because the electrode that was in the little rat's brain delivered an electrical pulse into his the part of the brain which is involved with brain reward system. It's called the medial forebrain bundle. Okay, so the little rat, if the electrode was in the right place, I was able to remotely stimulate using electrical wire. I would remotely stimulate, and the little rat would be alert, and you could see his little eyeballs lighting up. You could see that he was interested. Okay, now what was interesting was there was a lever, a little bar that he could press, and when he was not looking at the bar, I didn't give him any electrical shock. Okay, and the idea was to move him to the bar, because if we press the bar, he could stimulate his own brain, okay, electrically. So when he turned towards the bar, I would remotely zap his little brain, and he was totally alert, and he would move towards that direction. And the more he moved towards the lever, the more I pressed. And so I shaped his behavior so he moved to the lever all by himself, and he started pressing the lever all by himself, okay, to stimulate his own brain reward system in the brain, in his little brain. Their many rats, their little brain. So much so, they were so enthusiastic about the stimulation to the brain that they did not want food, they did not want sex, and they did not want water. And they would die pressing the little lever in the brain reward system. Okay? Any questions about that? Anybody?
Very interesting, I must say.
Yes. And the question some people have is, does it happen? How about humans? Yeah, well, we have the same. We have, in our brain, we have the same. See, I told you in the beginning that we're like rats, okay? Now, we also have a brain reward system. It's called the medial forebrain bundle, and it starts in the same kind of equivalent place in our brain, and it goes to the same equivalent place in the rat's brain. It goes to prefrontal cortex, this part of our brain here. And if we have time next time, we'll talk a little more about that. Now, how do we know we have this? Because when neurosurgeons need to go into the brain to remove tumors or whatever, the patient has to stay awake because there actually is no pain sensation in the brain. Okay, on the surface of the scalp, yes. So yeah, just a little bit of Novocaine, something local. You can saw the brain, the skull open, and stick anything in the brain you want, and it doesn't feel anything because there's no pain receptor in the brain. So, of course, some people thought, hey, let's try and put some electrodes in the equivalent brain reward system and ask our patients how they feel. And when they do that, because first you have to, that's not the justification for this, because you have to stimulate their brain, the patient's brain, to make sure that you're not removing too much tissue, right, beyond the tumor, to make sure you're not damaging their brain. So that's the justification for sticking electrodes in. But if you stick it slightly in a different place to see how this brain reward system works, you can ask the patients how they feel. And they feel really, really good. Really good. There's no better sensation they have ever felt. This is the brain reward system, okay? And it's related to dopamine. As you all know, dopamine is the feel-good neurotransmitter, okay? And so if we wanted to see that, this is exactly how it would look. We would stimulate a pathway from the primitive part of the brain to the prefrontal cortex. If we were to put an electrode in the rat's brain, they feel great. In the human brain, we feel great. And I feel good. That's how humans feel. This is the motivation pathway. So motivation already exists in the brain. It already exists in the brain. We don't have to invent motivation, okay? Motivation is a pathway that exists in the brain. And so if we could just stick an electrode in his brain, that would be perfect. Okay, so motivation already exists in the brain. So I couldn't understand why the students that I saw in the high school, when they asked me to do Clil, they looked like this. They looked really, really apathetic. And I thought, why are they so apathetic? Because I know that rats already have a motivation pathway, so do humans. And I know that rats love learning. I don't know if they love learning, but they are motivated to learn new things, okay, when they're involved. And so why are these students so much worse than the rats? Okay, that was my question back then. Okay, so that is how I started with Clil. Okay, so why such apathy and why such bad learning? Because not only were they apathetic, the students did not learn very well. What they learned about biology, which is what I had to do, I had to teach them biology, was really, really bad. They were not able to understand very basic things, and so I could not understand that. So I thought, in 2003, well, maybe we can use, how can we use Clil? How can we use Clil to harness this existence system of motivation and ability to learn? The ability to learn is in the brain. Motivation is in the brain. Can Clil harness this existent system? Okay, and in 2013, I submitted these a set of materials, and they received the Elton's Award in 2013 for innovative writing. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I didn't realize how big it was. Somebody sent it to me. I said, oh, okay, I'll send it in. And I realized then later that it was kind of an important award. And that for me was such gratification because, like I said, education research is ability to develop instructional materials for the end user. So I'm going to now, we're going to do a few of the tasks now, okay? And you'll see, let's see, manage all these. Okay, now let's go down to here. Okay, so the question now is, can Clil harness this existence system? Okay, so we're going to do some brain compatible Clil, and we're going to first be 16-year-old students, okay, and then we'll analyze the materials as 26-year-old teachers that we are. So let's see. Now, be ready to write on a piece of paper. Okay, does everybody have a piece of paper and ready? Because I want you to participate in the active learning process, and then we're going to analyze what happens. Okay, what is happening in your brain. Okay, so if you don't have some paper, 10 seconds, get some paper and a pen, okay? Write on a piece of paper, okay? Now, whoops, okay. Now, when I say you can type in the chat space, please type, and of course send it when I tell you to, okay? You already know how to manage that now. Okay, very good. Okay, so let's start then. Okay, let's start with this. Okay, decide which words we must use to correctly formulate 5 questions about the heart. Okay, write only your choice on a piece of paper. So, how many or how much chambers does the heart have? You just have to decide which one is correct, okay? I'm not asking you to answer the question. I'm just saying which of these 2 makes the question correct grammatically in English, okay? So write that on a piece of paper, and or type it into chat, but don't send anything, okay? Type it into the chat, but don't send yet, okay? Don't send yet. There are 5 questions, okay? So 1, write how much or how many, okay? Then, okay? Now, continue with number 2, 3, and 4. Type it into the chat, but don't send until I say send, okay? So work on your own, please. Just write what words, what of the choices is correct. Ready? Okay, send it please. Let's see what we have. Okay, let's see. Okay, so how many, how much, and then we have called. Okay, let's see. Okay, we're not answering the question. Okay, we're just saying which one is correct to these 2, which one is correct to these 2, which one is correct here. Okay, okay, let's see. Okay, now how many, number 1, how much, number 2, number 3, called, number 4, different from, and number 5, is it true? That's right, okay? The last person that answered here, Ostic Mojka, okay? Mojka, okay. Very good, okay? Okay, now, so here are the correct answers. Okay. Now, so we have here, these are the correct answers now. How many chambers does a heart have? How much blood does a heart pump each minute? What are the upper chambers called? How are the ventricles, the lower chambers, different from the upper chambers? And is it true that the heart shows left-right symmetry? Okay, so the first thing you did was decide which one of the options is correct. And here they are correct. Now we're going to look for the answers. Here, exercise B is, there are 7 answers. There are 7 options. Here are 5 questions. Here are 7 options. I'd like you now to write, okay, on your piece of paper or in the chat, the answer to number 1. How many chambers does a heart have? A, B, C, D, E, F, or G. Okay, so 1, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 2, write it in the chat, and then we'll send it, okay, when I say send. Okay, let's send it. Let's see what we have. Okay. Okay, DFCEA. Well, you cannot go wrong, that's for sure. Okay, so how many chambers does a heart have? There are 4. You cannot answer differently. Then you have how much blood? Only this F is correct. Is it true that the heart shows that? Yes, it is A. Okay, this one, 5A. Okay, then what are the upper chambers called? Atrium singular, atrium plural. That's the only answer that can be correct. And finally, this one, how are the ventricles, the lower chambers, different from the upper chambers? And they are larger. Okay, you cannot go wrong. Okay, if you know B1 level English, you can do this. Now, here's exercise 2, and then we're going to analyze this later. Let's look at this as a student. Let's exercise 2. Here's exercise 2. Dinosauro and Einstein are in the same class. They both study very hard, but Ein always gets better grades because he knows that it is important to use language academically. Dino continues to believe that the only thing that matters is if the information is correct. Look at the 2 texts and decide which one was written by Dino and which was written by Ein. Okay, so please read these 2 texts and write in the chat left and right and associate a name with it, Dino or Ein, okay, in the chat. And then when I say send, we can send it, okay? Okay, please send. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. Dino on the left and Ein on the right. Great. We're still students, okay? So let's keep going, okay? Okay. Now, here with this information that you students have just successfully done so well, okay? I'd like you to decide which one of these, use information you have obtained in exercises 1 and 2 to decide which schematic diagram represents the heart, okay? So, in the chat, please write which one represents the heart. And then when I say send, we'll send, okay? Is that my mouse? Okay, send please. Such good students. Okay, bravissimi. Okay, now we're done being students. We're no longer 16. Now let's go back to being 28. Now, you got it right. I'm going to show you if it worked. Okay, let's look at some learning outcomes. I think there's a pen going on around here. Is that mine? Anyways, okay. There's a little yellow line going on. Okay, so I'd like to show you some learning outcomes. Okay, the set of Clil activities, there are 24 activities. I've just shown you the first 3, and there were 24, and it takes about 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get through. But after the first 5 activities, here's some, something that one student wrote. Now, I've done this experiment with many, many students, and this was one set of materials I got one of the early times. And let's take a look, okay? These are the mistakes that this student wrote, okay? See, double M, it's just one. Situated is situated. Situate is wrong. Again, situate here, wrong. Which without an H, terrible, terrible. Same thing here. Okay. These solid lines means the first time. The dotted lines means the second time. The same mistake. Okay. Situate. Okay. So here there was, yeah. So okay. So these are mistakes. Okay. Very bad. Which without an H. Now, this green is all correct. It's all correct from the point of view of language, and it's all correct from the point of view of content. Totally correct. Here is self-correction. Y does not exist in Italian. This student self-corrected from an I to a Y. You can see that here. Larger than an A. Italians often write with an E. Larger than. They confuse than and then. And so this is self-correction. And that's excellent. And here are amazing things. They're amazing because in Italian, we don't have these compound adjectives. Here's a compound adjective. Left, right, chamber. When you were doing the tasks, you saw left, right, symmetry. Okay? Left, right, symmetry. Here, the student wrote left, right, chamber. Okay? That's amazing. Okay? And also here, interventricular septum. That was later on, but this is a hyphenated adjective. Here also, look, two atria, right atrium. You learned atrium singular, atria plural. The student learned it in 15 minutes into the task. Okay? So, this is the ability to use discipline-appropriate academic language to communicate age-appropriate complex knowledge. Okay? So this is age-appropriate productive academic literacy in the foreign language. Okay? Now, so that was the medial forebrain bundle, motivation. So the question I had was, when I started developing the materials, can we use Clil to activate this bundle? If we don't have an electrode, can we use the materials to do this? And the answer is yes, we can. Yes, we can. Now, how was it possible? We were designing learning with the brain in mind. Let's see how. Okay? We were tasking through cognitive neuroscience. This is how it was possible. These were the tasks, and this was the outcome. Now, if you're alive, your brain is on, okay? Even though you don't think some of our students' brains are on, or spouses. But anyways, the brain is always on, okay? If you're alive, the brain is on. So I'd like you to read this text now. Read this text. Okay. Now, you are able to understand this even if it's written totally incorrectly. Okay? I'm sorry, I should have gotten a Slovenian text and done the same. But you understand how you were able to interpret according to research at Cambridge University.
Yeah.
How did you know? How could you do this? Okay? The brain processes information immediately, looking for meaning. And that is how you were able to understand this. Now, if you're breathing, your brain tries to make sense of whatever information is going in, whether you like it or not, and whether you know it or not. So, some people say, no way, we're smart animals, we can control our thinking. We're too smart to waste our brain power on processing useless information. Only fools think too quickly. That's what some people think. But the truth is, that's not true. All animals think fast, and we're just like other little animals, okay? Even if thinking fast results in incorrect assumptions, it's better to make sense of nonsense. Okay? So our brain processes information immediately, even if it makes no sense. Now, why is that? Because back when we were walking in the savannah, our ancestors, if they saw something orange behind the bush moving, they run, okay? They need to run. They don't care if it's a dry bush, they don't care if it's a big tiger, small lion, big giraffe, they don't care what it is, they run, okay? And that's essential for survival of the species. So that is why our brain processes information immediately. If you think you're smart and you don't think too fast, you're wrong, okay? Daniel Kahneman wrote a fabulous book, Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. Everybody must read that, okay? He won the Nobel Prize for economics. And so our brain immediately processes information, immediately gives it an interpretation. It's essential in the jungle. Our brain is a product of evolution. And this is what we have to remember. It is always on and processing information. Even if it's useless information, and even if it's not understanding most of this information, okay, it may be a waste of your brain power, but it's essential for your survival. And that's the brain we have. Some people will, somebody wants to ask about digital brain in the digital era, can ask about that, okay, and when we've done. Now, in addition, so that is one reason why you could understand the Cambridge text and why you were able to understand these and why the students were able to learn. And also, the tasks were controlled, sustained focus. Our brain is wired to process information quickly from everywhere. That's why in the classroom, we need to have the students focus on one little task at a time. Because otherwise, our brain is made to detect all sorts of changes around us. So this is one little task. It takes a few minutes. When you finish, you can talk to your friend. But you have to finish the little task. But it's a small task, and it can be done very quickly. You just need to choose how much, how many. Then you decide which answer, and then you decide who wrote what, and then you decide this. But one step at a time, okay? Now, the other thing was these were very stupid grammar tasks. They were not earth-shattering, fabulous language exercises. They were simple grammar exercises using familiar language, okay? So they were simple and solvable problems. What happens when we solve solvable problems? When we solve solvable problems, we go into attention. We go into a problem-solving state. Rats do this, we do this. And this activates a reticular norepinephrine system, which is a primitive part of the brain process. And this norepinephrine projects to all parts of the brain, and it's the alert state. It's a pathway which activates primitive attention behavior, okay? That's when we pay attention. And how do we get the students' attention? We give them a stupid, solvable problem, okay? And when you're in that attention state, your pupils dilate. Your pupils in your eye, they dilate. Pupillary dilation is caused by the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. So, you're in the attention state, your pupils dilate. Now, when your pupils are dilating and when you're in full attention, you're in what Csikszentmihalyi, psychologist from Hungary, calls flow in consciousness. Okay? That's the optimal experience of flow. And Csikszentmihalyi, he found this state by looking at artists. Artists could paint for days without eating. Now, we can't expect our students to learn for days without eating, but we can put them in small, short states of flux. Okay? And that's what this is, a state of flux, flow in consciousness. Why don't you read this, okay, yourselves, the definition of flow. Carmen, I don't know if you want to translate it into Slovene.
I don't know. Okay. Anybody need it or? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Maybe it's best. I don't know. Okay, if you want to translate.
Isn't this close to what Vygotsky calls the
zone of approximate development.
Exactly, the zone of proximal development? Does this come close to that?
The zone of proximal development is about moving slowly towards what you do know and move a little bit beyond into what you don't know, yeah? To stick new knowledge onto known knowledge. So you can imagine a snowball getting bigger and bigger. This is not associated with learning. This is associated with just a state. So this, I'm sure if we, it all comes to how the brain learns, but if I see what you're saying in that it says if it's too easy, we are bored. Is that what you're noticing?
This is what I noticed. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if it's too difficult, then of course you also switch off.
Yes, of course. Yeah. That would be a big jump in Vygotsky terms. Would be too difficult. Yeah. Okay. So, but I mean, they're all coming together in the same thing. So flow. So when students enter in flow, this is what happens in flow. You've seen students, right? And you've seen young children playing videos, and you hope doctors who are doing surgery get into flow, okay? So that is the state of flow. When they're doing something that they can do, and like Carmen said, that is not boring, okay? It's not boring. So that's the optimal state of learning, for paying attention, for being, and that when you're in that state, your pupils are dilated. So what were these stupid little English language tasks? Okay, this one here. It was just simply putting the students in a state of flow. Okay, that's all I was trying to do. Okay, and here, however, what were we doing here? In the second task with Dino and Ein, we were asking students to consider which one is academic language. So we're teaching them explicitly about academic language, but it's a small, simple task. And they're the ones that are actively doing it, not me explaining it to them. Okay? So they go into their little state of flow because of the task, not because I'm explaining. Okay? Now, are these highly interesting? Not really. They're not interesting. Students don't really care how many chambers a heart has, except it's not really that interesting. It's the problem that they can solve which is interesting. Okay? Now, we can't resist a good challenge. How many of you do crossword puzzles or sudokus on the weekends? Could you write in the chat if you do any sudoku or puzzle, crossword puzzles, anybody? Just send it. Let's see what people do if they use any of these, if they do any of these things. Crosswords? Oh, very rarely, Carmen, okay. Anybody else? Both. Okay. Crosswords, excellent. Now see all these people that do these crosswords and sudokus? No time. Okay. Okay, That's right. The other people are just wasting their time because actually there is no reason to do a crossword or a Sudoku because we have no time for this. Okay? So, but why do we do it? I'll tell you why we do it. Because it gives us pleasure. It gives us pleasure. When we're doing these crosswords, etc., and solving solvable problems, there's a pleasure state associated. Your pupils are dilated, and that's the norepinephrine coming from the reticular activating system from the brainstem. Your pupils are dilated, and when you find the answer, there's this aha moment. And in that aha moment, there's pleasure. And when you solve a problem, when you find that number, when you find the word, the problem is solved, and your pupils constrict. Okay? So as you're paying attention, your pupils are dilated. You're paying attention. You're in a state of flow. Norepinephrine is going in your brain. When you've solved the problem, your pupils constrict. Learning and problem solving may activate primitive pleasure pathways. Okay? That is why active learning, and this is the little rat with his little electrode. Instead of putting electrode in, we're using tasks to put students into that activated state, okay, to activate their motivation pathway, okay, to solve solvable problems. The medial forebrain bundle, the brain reward system. Now, so this is the state we want our students to be in. Active learning, like one of the respondents said, repetition, and I add, solving solvable problems. Okay, solving solvable problems. Now, I see that we're coming to the end of time. So, I don't know if Carmen, should I continue, or how much time should I continue for, or should I stop and save this for next time?
Yeah, I think save the rest for the next time. Okay. So that's, I think it's like, you know, to be continued. Stop at the most interesting time, I think. The most interesting point. Yeah.
So I'd like to suggest then that if for our next meeting we're going to look at the language production through Clil. Oh, okay, I'm not sharing my screen. Language production through Clil and task-based language teaching. And now, for next time, what if you want? Let me see. Do you assign homework?
No, usually not.
Okay. Well, if we want to, I'd like to share. If people want to, what we can do is go to tasks where I've published in Cambridge University Press some Clil pages. Okay, I'll stop sharing this. I'll just tell you. Okay, I've developed some Clil pages about history, about maths, about other school subjects, arts, okay? And they're in the Cambridge University Press Talent series. I don't know if you have this series, Talent?
I don't know. Is this the name, I mean, of the textbook, or I see, yeah. Can you maybe I can give a link or something?
Has anybody heard of this? Okay, let me show you on the screen then. Okay, here we are. Here they are. Okay, Talent. Okay, these are the textbooks. And in the textbooks there are 10 pages. In each one there are 10 pages, and they're Clil about history and maths, etc. And I'll give you the link to these.
Okay.
And my suggestion would be the following: to look at these activities, look at these tasks, and just look at them. Okay, just look at them, and in light of what we talked about, where is the problem solving? What problems are they solving? Are the students solving? Okay, and what are the competences being learned through these tasks? Yeah. And
okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
and the next time for closure, I'll just I'll show how we use L1 textbooks as a way to do Clil, because not everybody can develop tasks.
Yes.
But it's important to look at tasks to understand the what is happening from the neuroscience point of view. Yeah.
Thank you, Teresa. Any questions now? Because there's still, time to ask questions, or I don't know, because there are some. Nastya, you have a lot of experiences with Clil. There is one lady who teaches in Nova Gorica. So, and Nastya, you live in Italy, don't you? I think, I don't know.
Sì.
Yeah, sì. Yeah, she lives in Italy and she teaches, and they do this. Yeah, okay, well, you go on.
Kan je zdaj začnem v italijansko?
Yeah, well, yeah, you can choose.
Posso parlare anche in italiano?
Yeah, okay.
Va bene.
Va bene. No, noi siamo una scuola secondaria superiore, proprio al confine con la Gorizia, qui vicino, no? E usiamo Clil facciamo il Clil già dal 2010, però facciamo con il team teaching del content, allora del professore che insegna ad esempio come me l'economia e il prof che insegna l'italiano o l'inglese. E cosa abbiamo prodotto? Allora, per motivare più i ragazzi abbiamo preso, ad esempio, non so, quando faccio io, ad esempio, parlo nel mio programma del denaro, dei soldi, ad esempio, lì facciamo le cose che sono nuove nel mondo, ad esempio come criptovalute o ad esempio neobanche e così via, che così li facciamo, sono più motivati, più interessati per le cose che succedono adesso, che sono ad esempio nuove nel mondo. Ad esempio anche con le sustainability abbiamo adesso fatto con quello COP che era 26 a Glasgow. Allora riusciamo a fare le cose interessanti che così vediamo che sono più interessanti anche ai ragazzi. Siamo una scuola, allora, istituto tecnico commerciale, no? Non un liceo, perché qui allora si iscrivono anche ragazzi che non sono motivati come ad esempio quelli che vanno in liceo. E dopo abbiamo anche i vocational training, anche i ragazzi, ad esempio, che dopo lavorano nei vari supermarket, e lì abbiamo un Clil con la professoressa dell'italiano. E queste cose noi facciamo come un open curricula che possiamo utilizzarlo, e così troviamo che i ragazzi, se no, perché siamo al confine, allora è difficile se no non sapere la lingua italiana, perché sono tanti consumatori italiani che arrivano lì a Nova Gorica a comprare delle cose, ad esempio le banche, la benzina, fare e così via. Abbiamo tanti materiali, abbiamo sviluppato tanti materiali con i docenti delle lingue, e adesso ci muoviamo piano piano avanti. Questo è il mio discorso.
Sì, bellissimo. È una sfida di tutti noi che insegniamo contenuto è la capacità di produrre il linguaggio ben scritto, no? Il testo ben scritto. Quindi sì, questa è la sfida dell'istruzione, perché i concetti sono facilmente comprensibili, i concetti sono belli, no? Però poi saper usare il linguaggio delle discipline per comunicare in modo appropriato all'età. Sì.
Infatti, perché dopo, ad esempio, siccome siamo al confine, allora troviamo anche sempre le cose, ad esempio dai radio, il Sole 24 Ore, la Zanzara, no? Che fa certe provocazioni, e così veramente siamo felici che facciamo queste cose, perché anche i ragazzi vediamo che sono soddisfatti di queste di queste ore che abbiamo. Allora, ogni classe ha un'ora alla settimana e sì, così ci
Complimenti.
muoviamo. Grazie, la
Complimenti,
ringrazio.
speriamo la prossima volta magari o durante questo intervallo, se vogliamo, mi può mandare anche quella che scrivono i ragazzi, così vediamo anche se vuole. Mm?
Sì, sì.
Ok, così
O
vediamo.
forse il materiale che ce l'abbiamo, che
Ok,
abbiamo sviluppato, il nostro materiale proprio.
anche, sì, sì,
Sì,
sì,
sì, sì,
così
perché se
vediamo.
no non abbiamo niente. Sì, infatti.
Fantastico, ok, benissimo. Ok, Carmen, you understood, yeah?
Grazie.
Grazie a lei. So I was suggesting that next time we take a look at how to prompt towards production of academic text.
Yeah.
Come spingiamo verso la produzione di testo accademico da parte dei ragazzi, perché il nostro mal di testa è dicono che hanno capito, però poi quando leggiamo quello che hanno scritto, perché non hanno scritto bene? Quindi, so this is a challenge
Yeah, for everybody. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. But I think, I mean, this is really good practice what Nastya and her colleagues are doing, and they have presented so their work, you know, their materials, and we have all, I think, learned lots from them. So, I mean, the Clil that we are trying to implement is actually the Clil that is either, I mean, used in this, how they say, special kinds of lessons, you know, when two teachers get together, so cross-curricular lessons, or we try to implement it in very early, you know, in this early ages, at early ages. So in year 1, 2, and 3, and we wrote curricula in that way that teachers, you know, start planning their lessons from the content point of view and not from the, you know, grammar point. I mean, so it's not grammar that comes first, but it's the content that comes first. So we have managed so much, but and there are also some other good practices, but we are still, yeah, I think, well, that's my opinion, still have lots to learn.
wait, next time we can talk about how tasks which prompt for
Yeah.
Production.
Yeah, this is, yeah, and yeah, I think you made us really ponder on many issues. So thank you very much. So, right, any more questions? Then I absolutely invite you all that are here today, but also others, you know, to our second seminar, so to the continuation, which will happen in January, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Teresa, all the best, stay healthy.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for, well, very informative, I mean, lecture, or it wasn't lecture, it was interactive workshop, I think. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, and many solvable tasks.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Buon divertimento. Bye. See you.
Bye bye.
Year, huh?
Thank you. Grazie.
Bye, bye,
Bye.
bye.
Grazie. Arrivederci. Bye.
Arrivederla.
Arrivederci.